Hey everyone, Mr. Regan here, and today we're going to be looking at how we're going to be explaining the thruster cause and effect that we see with our pod's velocity change. Good explanations to go with our models for how the claims for our pod could be true. Now, you're going to be writing about the two claims in terms of cause and effect. Dr. Gonzalez is interested in understanding the relationship between thruster force and the change in the pod's velocity. This will help the ground team interpret the data they're getting back from the pod. So, when thinking about cause and effect, we know that understanding cause and effect can help us infer what led to particular results, like our pod changing velocity. So, let's look at an example that maybe might help us write our own cause and effects explanations. So, when we did our lab with our meter stick in our two lids, we had to figure out what caused the jar lids to start moving across the floor. If we were going to write this in terms of cause and effect, we might start off with something simple like the launchers caused the lids to start moving across the floor. And though that is a basic explanation, that's not a scientific explanation of the cause and effect relationship. So let's take a look at how we would make that into more of a scientific cause and effect relationship. A better response would be when I released the launcher exerted a force on the jar lids. As a result, the force exerted by the launchers, the velocity of the jar lids changed, and it started to move across the floor. So notice we're beginning to show cause and effects. This cause had this effect. We're using our science terminology to explain how this cause creates this effect. And we're going to need to do this for our space pod. So let's take a look at what should have happened. We know that the pod came in with a medium velocity as we see in our modeling tool. If the normal thrusters would have fired, they would have created a force strong enough to cause the pod to stop. So if I was to create a cause and effect explanation for this, like what we see in our model here, I would start by saying during a normal mission, starting at the very first before force, uh, the pod would approach the space station with a medium velocity. At this point, I would talk about when the thrusters fired, they would exert a force in the opposite direction of the pod's motion. And then in the after, the effect of the thruster force would cause the pod to stop and lead to it docking with the station. Notice a few things. I'm explaining everything that led up to that force, everything that happened after. I'm explaining the cause for the before and during, and that effect after. Not only that, I'm using those science vocab words to explain that. So, your job now is going to be to create our own scientific response. So, there are two parts to the writing activity since we have two claims. For each claim, claim 1 and 2, you'll describe the thruster problem at time 3 in our comic that caused the effect we see with the pod's velocity change, just like the examples we just gave. Dr. Gonzalez needs both explanations to not only understand our models, but to understand the science for how the claims could be possible. So we have our comic that we've seen here. We know what has happening up to the time we lost the signal. We know the claims are going to be used to explain the change in direction we see here in velocity. So when you're writing about the four events for our two claims, we need to make sure we clearly state how a strong or weak force from the thrusters would affect the pod's motion and use our science vocab um, to explain our thinking about force and velocity. So as you explain this cause and effect relationship between the pod and its thrusters, you'll have your word bank. You'll need to use all of our words in your explanation for how claim 1 and 2 could happen. And you can use as many or as few transition phrases as you need. These are here to help you connect your ideas. So you'll look at the claim and you'll create your explanation thinking about everything that happened in the comic. So at this point, take a second, complete your survey. If you put your X in yellow or red, reach out. Otherwise, good luck.